The G8 is a governmental political forum. The forum originated with the 1975 summit hosted by France that brought together representatives of 6 governments: France, the Federal Republic of Germany, Italy, Japan, the United Kingdom, and the United States, thus leading to the name Group of Six, G6. The summit became known as the Group of Seven, the G7, in 1976 with the addition of Canada. Russia was added to the political forum from 1997, which then became known as the G8. Russia was, however, suspended in 2014 following the annexation of Crimea. The European Union has been represented within the G8 since the 1980s but originally could not host a chair summit. The 40th summit was the first time the European Union was able to host and chair a summit. G8 can refer to the member states in aggregate or to the annual summit meeting of the G8 heads of government. The former term, G6, is now frequently applied to the 6 most populous countries within the European Union. G8 ministers also meet throughout the year, such as the G7 finance ministers, G8 foreign ministers, or G8 environment ministers. Collectively, in 2012 the G8 nations comprised 50.1% of 2012 global nominal GDP and 40.9% of global GDP. Each calendar year the responsibility of hosting the G8 has rotated through the member states in the following order: France, United States, United Kingdom, Russia, Germany, Japan, Italy, and Canada. The holder of the presidency sets the agenda, hosts the summit for that year, and determines which ministerial meetings will take place. Both France and the United Kingdom have expressed a desire to expand the group to include 5 developing countries, referred to as the Outreach 5 or the Plus 5: Brazil, People's Republic of China, India, Mexico, and South Africa. These countries have participated as guests in meetings that are sometimes called G8 Plus 5, with the G20 major economies growing in stature since the 2008 Washington summit. World leaders from the group announced at the Pittsburgh summit on September 25, 2009, that the group would replace the G8 as the main economic council of wealthy nations. The G7 G8 retains its role as a premier body for international security cooperation with the purpose of discussing global issues such as economic growth, crisis management, global security, energy, and terrorism. On March 24, 2014, the original G7 nations voted to, in effect, suspend Russia from the organization in response to the country's annexation of Crimea. However, it was made clear that the suspension was temporary. Later on, the Italian Foreign Affairs Minister Federico Moffrini and other Italian authorities, along with the East-West Institute board member Wolfgang Ischinger, suggested that Russia may restore its membership in the group, adding that the return to the G8 format depends on Moscow and on Russian actions. In 2015, the German Foreign Minister Frank-Walter Steinmeier stated that Russia would be able to return to G8 given that there's no further escalation of the Ukrainian crisis, and Russia continues collaborating with the West on the Syrian conflict. In April 2016 he added that none of the major international conflicts can be solved without Russia, and the G7 countries will consider Russia's return to the group in 2017. The same year, Japanese Prime Minister Shinzo Abe called for Russia's return to G8, stating that Russia's involvement is crucial to tackling multiple crises in the Middle East. History. The concept of a forum for the world's major industrialized countries emerged prior to the 1973 oil crisis. On Sunday, March 25, 1973, the U.S. Secretary of the Treasury, George Shultz, convened an informal gathering of finance ministers from West Germany, France, and Britain before an upcoming meeting in Washington, D.C. When running the idea past President Nixon, he noted that he would be out of town and offered use of the White House. The meeting was subsequently held in the library on the ground floor. Taking the name from the setting, this original group of four became known as the Library Group. In mid-1973, at the World Bank IMF meetings, Schultz proposed the addition of Japan to the original four nations, who agreed. The informal gathering of senior financial officials from the United States, the United Kingdom, West Germany, Japan, and France became known as the Group of Five. During 1974, the heads of state and government of the top 10 industrial nations fell due to illness or scandal. There were 2 elections in the UK, 3 chancellors of West Germany, 3 presidents of France, 3 prime ministers of Japan and Italy, and 2 US presidents. Moreover, Canadian Prime Minister Pierre Trudeau was forced into an early election. Of the members of the Group of Five, all were new to the job with the exception of Pierre Trudeau. As 1975 dawned, Schmidt and Giscard d'Estaing were heads of government in their respective countries, and since they both spoke fluent English, it occurred to them that they, and British Prime Minister Harold Wilson and U.S. President Gerald Ford, could get together in an informal retreat and discuss election results and the issues of the day. In late spring, Giscard invited the heads of government from West Germany, Italy, Japan, the United Kingdom, and the United States to a summit in Château de Rambouillet. The annual meeting of the 6 leaders was organized under rotating presidency, forming the Group of Six. In 1976, with Wilson out as Prime Minister of Britain, Schmidt and Gerald Ford felt an English speaker with more experience was needed, so Canada's Pierre Trudeau was invited to join the group, and the group became the Group of Seven. Since first invited by the United Kingdom in 1977, the European Union has been represented by the President of the European Commission, and the leader of the country that holds the presidency of the Council of the European Union, and the Council President now also regularly attends. Until the 1985 Plaza Accord, no one outside a tight official circle knew when the 7 finance ministers met and what they agreed. The summit was announced the day before and a communiqué was issued afterwards. Following 1994's G7 summit in Naples, Russian officials held separate meetings with leaders of the G7 after the group's summits. This informal arrangement was dubbed the Political Eight, or colloquially, the G7+1. At the invitation of UK Prime Minister Tony Blair and US President Bill Clinton, President Boris Yeltsin was invited first as a guest observer, later as a full participant. It was seen as a way to encourage Yeltsin with his capitalist reforms. Russia formally joined the group in 1998, resulting in the Group of Eight, or G8. Food. A major focus of the G8 since 2009 has been the global supply of food. At the 2009 L'Aquila Summit, the G8's members promised to contribute $20 billion to the issue over 3 years. Since then, only 22% of the promised funds have been delivered. At the 2012 summit, President Barack Obama plans to ask G8 leaders to adopt a policy that would privatize global food investment. Crimean crisis and Russian suspension. On March 2, 2014, the remaining non-Russian G8 members, the European Union, and the European Commission suspended the planned G8 summit in the Russian city of Sochi and would instead meet as the G7 in Brussels, blaming Russia's role in the Crimean crisis. Following the suspension of the summit, on March 18, the French Minister of Foreign Affairs Laurent Fabius claimed that Russia was suspended from the G8. However, the German Chancellor Angela Merkel and French Foreign Ministry spokesman Romain Nadal clarified that Russia would remain a G8 member, and only the meeting would be suspended. While visiting Kiev, Ukraine on March 22, Canadian Prime Minister Stephen Harper Draper stated that he supports expelling Russia from the G8 and expects to discuss the potential expulsion with other G7 leaders at an upcoming meeting in The Hague. On March 24, G7 leaders met formally in The Hague, without Russia being present, and voted to officially suspend Russia's membership in the G8. Russian Foreign Minister Lavrov stated earlier that day that the G8 was an informal organization and membership was optional for Russia. Structure and activities. By design, the G8 deliberately lacks an administrative structure like those for international organizations, such as the United Nations or the World Bank. The group does not have a permanent secretariat or offices for its members. The presidency of the group rotates annually among member countries, with each new term beginning on the 1st of January of the year. The rotation order is France, the United States, the United Kingdom, Russia, Germany, Japan, Italy, and Canada. The country holding the presidency is responsible for planning and hosting a series of ministerial-level meetings, leading up to a mid-year summit attended by the heads of government. The President of the European Commission participates as an equal in all summit events. The ministerial meetings bring together ministers responsible for various portfolios to discuss issues of mutual global concern. The range of topics include health, law enforcement, labor, economic and social development, energy, environment, foreign affairs, justice and interior, terrorism, and trade. There are also a separate set of meetings known as the G8+5, created during the 2005 Gleneagles, Scotland Summit, that is attended by finance and energy ministers from all 8 member countries in addition to the 5 outreach countries, which are also known as the Group of Five: Brazil, People's Republic of China, India, Mexico, and South Africa. In June 2005, Justice Ministers and Interior Ministers from the G8 countries agreed to launch an international database on pedophiles. The G8 officials also agreed to pool data on terrorism, subject to restrictions by privacy and security laws in individual countries. Global energy. At the Hailagandam Summit in 2007, the G8 acknowledged a proposal from the EU for a worldwide initiative on efficient energy use. They agreed to explore, along with the International Energy Agency, the most effective means to promote energy efficiency internationally. A year later, on the 8th of June 2008, the G8 along with China, India, South Korea and a European community established the International Partnership for Energy Efficiency Cooperation. At the Energy Ministerial meeting hosted by Japan holding 2008 G8 presidency in Aomori, G8 finance ministers, whilst in preparation for the 34th summit of the G8 heads of state and government in Toiko, Hokkaido, met on the 13th and the 14th of June 2008 in Osaka, Japan. They agreed to the G8 Action Plan for Climate Change to enhance the engagement of private and public financial institutions. Quote, in closing, ministers supported the launch of new climate investment funds by the World Bank, which will help existing efforts until a new framework under the UNFCCC is implemented after 2012. The UNFCCC is not on track to meeting any of its stated goals. Annual Summit. The annual G8 Leaders Summit is attended by the heads of government. The member country holding the G8 presidency is responsible for organizing and hosting the year's summit. The serial annual summits can be parsed chronologically in arguably distinct ways, including as the sequence of host countries for the summits has recurred over time, series, etc. Member facts. 7 of the 7 top-ranked advanced economies with the largest GDP and with the highest national wealth last century, also known as G7. 7 of the 15 top-ranked countries with the highest net wealth per capita. 8 of 12 top-ranked leading export countries, 6 of 10 top-ranked countries with the largest gold reserves, 8 of 11 top-ranked economies, according to latest International Monetary Fund statistics, 5 countries with a nominal GDP per capita above $40,000, 5 countries with a sovereign wealth fund, administered by either a national or a state, provincial government, 8 of 30 top-ranked nations with large amounts of foreign exchange reserves in the central banks, 4 out of 9 countries having nuclear weapons, plus 2 countries that have nuclear weapon sharing programs, 7 of the 9 largest nuclear energy producers, although Germany announced in 2011 that it will close all of its nuclear power plants by 2022. Following the 2011 Tohoku earthquake and tsunami, Japan shut down all of its nuclear reactors. However, Japan restarted several nuclear reactors, with the refueling of other reactors underway. 8 of the 15 top donors to the UN budget for the 2013 annual fiscal year. 4 countries with AHDI index for 2013 of 0.9 and higher. 2 countries with the highest credit rating from Standard & Poor's, Fitch, and Moody's at the same time. 2 countries that retain the death penalty in law and practice. 2 countries consist of islands and have left-hand traffic. In the G8 states, 6 languages have official status. English in 2 countries, French in 2 countries, German, Italian, Japanese, and Russian in 1 country each. Visa policy of the G8 states. Within the G8 states, Russia requires visas from the 7 other countries, and Russian citizens needs visas for the 7 other countries, so the citizens of no G8 member can visit all 7 other countries visa-free. Canadians are the only G8 citizens who can travel to the United States without visa or ESTA. They can stay 6 months and work and study under simplified special procedure, while citizens from the other countries can stay for 3 months. Canada introduced an electronic travel authorization for visa-free eligible nationals in August 2015, and it will be mandatory on September 29, 2016. The United States, Japan, and Russia fingerprint all visitors. European members of G8, being EU citizens, Britons, French, Germans, and Italians, can live and work indefinitely in other EU countries and in the 4 EFTA countries. The status of EU citizen in Switzerland has to be settled in an upcoming treaty after Swiss referendum banned unlimited European immigration. G8 states and other countries. As of 2014, only Chileans and South Koreans have visa-free access to all G8 states. On November 22, Canada lifted the visa requirement for Chilean citizens. The citizens of Israel can travel to 7 G8 states visa-free, and the United States of America is discussing legislation that makes them eligible for ESTA. Japan is the only G8 member the citizens of which can travel visa-free to the People's Republic of China. Citizens of only 4 countries can travel visa-free both to the People's Republic of China and the United States of America, Brunei, Japan, San Marino, and Singapore. The United States of America is the only G8 member the citizens of which can travel visa-free to Equatorial Guinea. Russians can always travel visa-free to Kazakhstan. Britons, French, Germans, Italians, and U.S. citizens can travel visa-free to Kazakhstan from July 15, 2014 until July 15, 2015. This is part of a no-visa pilot program, but Kazakhstan has announced not to continue the program after July 2015. Currently, Russia and North Korea are discussing a visa-free regime. Cuba grants of the G8 citizens only Russians visa-free entry. The citizens of the 7 other countries must obtain a tourist card from a Cuban diplomatic mission before traveling. The tourist card grants maximum stay of 30 days and can be extended once for the same period. Under Cuban assets control regulations, all persons subject to U.S. jurisdiction must be licensed in order to engage in any travel-related transactions pursuant to travel to, from, and within Cuba. Britons, French, Germans, and Italians can visit Australia with the visitor online visa. Citizens of Canada, Japan, and the United States of America need the ETA online visa. Russians need the electronic visitor visa. Since November 27, citizens of Germany, Russia, and the United States of America have been eligible for online visas granted by India. Before the date, citizens of Japan had already been eligible for visas on arrival. Citizens of Canada, France, Italy, and the United Kingdom will be eligible for online visas in the near future. Travel freedom of G8 citizens: Germany, United Kingdom, United States, 174 countries visa-free, visa on arrival. Canada, 173 countries visa-free, visa on arrival. France, Italy, Japan, 172 countries visa-free, visa on arrival. Russia, 100 countries visa-free, visa on arrival. Dual citizenship policies of the G8 states. Canada and the United States of America allow dual citizenship and are worldwide the only 2 industrialized democracies to grant unconditional birthright citizenship. In the United States, eligible visitors must indicate whether they have several citizenships, and only natural-born citizens can be elected president or vice president. The United States of America and the non-G8 member Eritrea are currently the only 2 countries worldwide to have citizenship-based taxation. Contrary to some incorrect reports, China does not have such a system of taxation. France and the United Kingdom allow dual citizenship and have a restricted use solely. Germany allows dual citizenship with other EU countries, and Switzerland. Dual citizenship with other countries is possible if obtained at birth or with special permission. For children of legal immigrants, there is a restricted use solely. Children born on or after January 1, 2000 to non-German parents acquire German citizenship at birth if at least one parent has a permanent residence permit and the parent was residing in Germany for at least 8 years. The children must have lived in Germany for at least 8 years or attended school for 6 years until their 21st birthday. Non-EU, non-Swiss citizen parents born and grown up abroad usually cannot have dual citizenship themselves. Italy allows dual citizenship. Japan officially forbids dual citizenship. Japanese citizens who obtained a second citizenship at birth must choose one citizenship before the age of 22, or they will lose their Japanese citizenship. However, it is possible for Japanese citizens to currently have dual citizenship with another country, given special circumstances. For example, if one obtained dual citizenship prior to January 1, 1985, when the nationality law was enacted, one would retain said status into the present day. Russia allows dual citizenship, but the other citizenship must be reported to the officials. With G8+5 and the G20, all G8 countries became members of the unofficial $1 trillion club by 2005. Today, 14 countries in the world are members of both the unofficial club and the G20 major economies group. All of the G8, 15 of the G20, and 12 G8+5 countries are among the 20 top-ranked nations by the amount of voting power and special drawing rights in the International Monetary Fund. All members of the G8, excluding Russia, and 3 G20 nations not members of the G8, Australia, South Korea, and Argentina, have a HDI index of 0.8 or higher for 2013. Influence of member nations. The G7, G8 is considered an informal forum of countries deserving the status of great powers. Together the 8 countries making up the G8 represent about 14% of the world population, but they represent about 60% of the world wealth and 60% of the gross world product as measured by gross domestic product. All 8 nations being within the top 12 countries according to the CIA World Fact Book, the majority of global military power, and almost all of the world's active nuclear weapons. In 2007, the combined G8 in military spending was $850 billion. This is 72% of the world's total military expenditures. 4 of the G8 members, the United Kingdom, United States, France and Russia, together account for 96 to 99% of the world's nuclear weapons. Criticism. Some criticism centers on the assertion that members of G8 do not do enough to help global problems such as third world debt, global warming and the AIDS epidemic due to strict medicine patent policy and other issues related to globalization. In Unraveling Global Apartheid, the political analyst Titus Alexander described the G7, as it then was, as the cabinet of global minority rule, with a coordinating role in world affairs. The Conservative Heritage Foundation has criticized the G8 for advocating food security without making room for economic freedom. Relevance. The G8's relevance is unclear. It still represents the major industrialized countries, but critics argue that the G8 has now become unrepresentative of the world's most powerful economies. In particular, China has surpassed every economy but the United States, while Brazil has surpassed Canada and Italy. Also, according to the International Monetary Fund and the CIA World Fact Book, India has already surpassed Canada, Italy, UK, Germany, France, and Japan in terms of purchasing power parity, although remaining on the 10th position when it comes to nominal GDP. This has given rise to the idea of enlarging G8 to the G8 plus 5, which includes these other economically powerful nations. Other critics assert, however, that the concept of a country's net wealth is different from the nation's GDP, with Vladimir Putin not attending the 2012 G8 summit at Camp David. Foreign Policy magazine argued that the summit has generally outlived its usefulness as a viable international gathering of foreign leaders. Another contributor to Foreign Policy suggested that Russia should be excluded from the G8 altogether. Yet a third contributor commented in 2012 that the G8 was still relevant, despite the increasing international power and prestige of the G20 major economies leaders summit. British Prime Minister David Cameron said of the G8 in 2012, "Some people ask, does the G8 still matter when we have a group of 20? My answer is, yes. The G8 is a group of like-minded countries that share a belief in free enterprise as the best route to growth. As 8 countries making up about half the world's gross domestic product, the standards we set, the commitments we make, and the steps we take can help solve vital global issues, fire up economies and drive prosperity all over the world." Current leaders. Youth 8 Summit. The Y8 Summit, or simply Y8, formerly known as the G8 Youth Summit, is the youth counterpart to the G8 Summit. The first summit to use the name Y8 took place in May 2012 in Puebla, Mexico, alongside the Youth G8 that took place in Washington, D.C. the same year. The Y8 Summit brings together young leaders from G8 nations and the European Union to facilitate discussions of international international affairs, promote cross-cultural understanding, and build global friendships. The conference closely follows the formal negotiation procedures of the G8 summit. The Y8 summit represents the innovative voice of young adults between the age of 18 and 35. The delegates jointly come up with a consensus-based, written statement in the end, the final communiqué. This document is subsequently presented to G8 leaders in order to inspire positive change. The Y8 summit is organized annually by a global network of youth-led organizations called The Idea. The organizations undertake the selection processes for the respective national delegations, while the hosting country is responsible for organizing the summit. Now, several youth associations are supporting and getting involved in the project. For instance, every year, the Young European Leadership Association is recruiting and sending EU delegates. The goal of the Y8 summit is to bring together young people from around the world to allow the voices and opinions of young generations to be heard, and to encourage them to take part in global decision-making processes. The Y8 Summit 2014 in Moscow was suspended due to the suspension of Russia from the G8.